Dorcine, Jenny, Frank, Pat, John, Gail, Martha, the Morels, O'Connors, Raymond, Smart, and Taylor. You are the flyers.
Tigris and Euphrates, the rivers, and so you understand this, and then just swept over to the rivers over here. And if you look at the shape of it, you see that it's a crescent shape, and hence it was always known as the Fertile Crescent, because this is the only way you can go and feed your armies on the way. If you try to go through any of the other directions, I mean, it would seem more sensible to go straight, it's a shorter distance, but it's all desert. Most of you experienced the desert in the last few days. You understand that you wouldn't want to go that way with your army, and so that was why this little tiny piece of land has been so strategically important. It is the bridge between what were the two superpowers, and then of course later on Europe comes into the equation, Greeks, Romans, and so on. And so it's not only the bridge between Africa and Asia, but it's also the bridge between Europe as well. If you control here, you control the whole area. And so that was why it was always, and still is, so important. Everybody has ruled this little piece of land. There are only like 3 periods in our history when Israel has been a free people. Talk about the biblical period, you know, but David, Solomon, and the kings of Judah and so on. You can talk about a little tiny period, about 100 years of Jewish freedom in the Hasmonean period between the Greeks and the Romans, and since 1948 when Israel became a state. Otherwise, someone else has always been here because of its strategy. It's so vitally important. And just so that you understand the Jezreel Valley, that the mountains all the way around, when Napoleon saw this valley on his Middle East campaign, he said, if anyone would want to fight a battle, this is the place. It's perfect. Someone that is military-minded, but of course the way that if you can get in here, you can go in different directions. And so you can see these tells that we'll talk about, and Megiddo is perhaps the most important of all. And if you've ever read the book of Michener, The Source, he based it, it's a novel of course, but he based it on this particular tell of Megiddo and the different periods. But here is your great sea route coming up. It comes through the valley here. And this is Megiddo. I don't know why Megiddo's got like off as far as the name, I guess, because you scratched it. But anyway, that's Megiddo sitting right at the edge of the Jezreel Valley, at the end of the pass. This pass is quite narrow. It's a 4-lane highway today, but even so, you could block it off and try and prevent the Egyptians coming up and going north. Yokneam, we passed Yokneam, that funny grassy sort of hill sitting right here. This is Mount Carmel, and the high point up here was what I pointed to, sort of so that you could see where Elijah challenged the prophets of Baal, and the highest point of Mount Carmel, which you can see this is the region. So when we talk about a mountain pass, you understand in Israel it's hills. You know? Even so, that's the way you bring an army. And then you've got your way through Samaria. This is the way of the patriarchs that takes you down all the way to Jerusalem, eventually through Hebron, down to Beersheba. And here is the town of Jezreel, sitting on the edge of the valley here. This was sort of the hub of Ahab and Jezebel. And then you've got Bet-Shan, the mighty big city that sat right at the entrance to the valley. So if anybody who's coming from the north, this is one of the main ways into the country of Israel, through the Bet-Shan part of the Jezreel Valley. It's the side branch of it. And there was a good fording point. This is the Rift Valley. It goes down here. There was a good fording point that armies could get across the Jordan. So you understand that these cities grow up, number one, where there's water, and number two, on the most important routes. Okay? And then you need to have food in the area in order to support them. If you can kind of answer yes to all those questions, there's always water. If there's no water, forget it. You couldn't build in ancient times. They couldn't move the water like the Romans could move aqueducts and so on. So there always is a water spring, but also there are very, very strategic points of the highway. That's the Jezreel Valley. Go the route here, we'll look at it when we get up on the top of Megiddo. You'll see Mount Tabor at the end of the valley. The route skirted around Mount Tabor and went on up to Damascus via Hazer or via the Sea of Galilee. Right? So keep that in mind. We'll keep looking at the map with me. You can only settle where there's water. And so and of course then the second issue is the route, but the water is the main one. The most important question is, where is the water? You could always be sure that you've got either a river or a water spring right near it somewhere. So because of us being on such an important part of the sort of ancient highway of history between Egypt and Babylonia, the thing was that if you were an Egyptian and you wanted to attack the north, you're going to send your army out and it's going to go from one place to another. And as they go, because they wanted to show their dominance, when they fought for it, they would destroy what was in their way. But then, of course, you want to control the route, so then you bring your own vassal king that will rule in the name of the Pharaoh, and they will build on that. They have to build on the same spot because that's where the water is. And then somebody else comes along and attacks it. And of course, what do? They build on top, and they build on top, and they build on top, until you get these funny-looking, flat-topped hills with sloping sides, and then of course you get this phenomena which is called a tell. A tell is an archaeological mound. So some of them, like Yokneam, only have 5 levels of cities, one on top of the other. Megiddo, because it is so strategically important, it's literally between here and Bet-Shan and Hazer, the most important tells in this country. Because of their positions, they have anything between 25. Get in through a gate that's just the right size for a chariot and no wider, and then you've got 3 guardhouses on either side of 2 massive towers. Okay, that was the Solomonic gate. It's supposed to be, it was such a good gate actually that they continued to use it through later periods. And when it talks in the Bible about the judge or the king or the elders sat within the gates of the city, we're talking between the outer gate and the inner gate, right? And so it was very useful. If you needed a decision made, you had wanted some kind of agreement made, whatever it was, or you had a problem, you knew where to find the judge or the king, always within the gates of the city. And all the gates always had an outer gate and an inner gate. These are the walls from the time of Ahab. They call them inset offset. They were very strong against battering rams. We'll walk over. The stables, part of the stables are still over here, but a lot of the stables have gone, because this is where they cut the wedge to see how many levels of city there used to be. Where you see the little red light was where the platform was, or the altar, where sacrificing used to take place in an earlier period. Right? And there's a little model outside, and you can see they used to take the animals. They never found human bones in the area of the sacrificing, so it wasn't a human sacrifice, it was only animal sacrifice. But it is pagan and their sacrifice, and it is a whole pantheon of pagan temples there underneath, all near the area of the altar. And it is the only complete circular altar like that that's been found in this country. And of course the whole wedge goes right the way down, and that's where the archaeologists now have found, the different levels of Megiddo. So we'll put our stables back just for a minute, and then we'll walk over to where the grain silo is. It's that little round piece over there, and that is still as it was originally discovered. Of course the roofing has disappeared, must have had some sort of a dome roof or something to it, but the original staircase to go up and to go down is still there to fetch the grain. And immediately behind it, remember we're looking at it the period as it was as an administrative center, and so there would have been the local ruler who ruled for the king, and he would have this palace over there, and he was guarded by a wall, and whoever guarded him, you can see the little guardhouse, guarded the grain silo, make sure that no one stole any. Then we'll go over to this area over here, which is another set of stables, and then they've done some reconstruction. They've put a few metal horses and a metal chariot, so you can picture it. But picture the stable blocks. Look at the amount of stable blocks that were here. And you'll see the original, a few of the original mangers. And then the best part, of course, is this water system. Your spring is outside the city in a cave. Peacetime, it's not a problem. You run down through the gate, you make a little trip all the way around the other side, you go fetch your water, and you carry it all the way back. I mean, what kind of being easy, especially if you've got a bunch of horses to water before your troops, until he gets to the bedrock where the original Megiddo was. He cuts through. That was how it worked, and so that, when I say we're going through this shaft, and it's 183 steps down and 80 out, that's where we're going, and then Chaim will meet us there and bring us back over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out.